Hello and welcome to News 9. I'm Aditya Raj Kaul and this is the Diplomat. India and Brazil share a rich history of bilateral ties spanning 75 years, with both the nations having a common heritage of the struggle for independence and development, forging the foundation of this entire bilateral cooperation. In fact, Brazil had taken from India the baton of the G20 presidency only last year. How is the relationship progressing and what can we expect in future? To speak up more about it, joining me is the Ambassador of Brazil to India, Ambassador Kenneth Nóbrega. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Why don't you take the seat, please?
Okay.
Well, Ambassador, let me begin by asking you about your experiences in India. It's been almost 1.5 years that you've been here in New Delhi. Such a beautiful residence here in the heart of the national capital of India. How's the experience been like? You know, interacting with different politicians and leaders in the Modi government. And apart from that, you know, different languages, cultures, and I'm sure you would have traveled through the country.
Actually, I will start by saying that I applied for this position. I had known India since 2013. I had some short official missions in India before coming here as an ambassador.
I see.
I was here in 2013, 16, 17, and 18. Mostly as BRICS Sherpa. So I fell under the spell of India because of its culture, because of its civilization. You know, I love architecture and I love also learning languages. So this is what really drew me to India, and also because India is living a very special historical moment, growing at breakneck pace and offering many opportunities, I think, to strengthen our bilateral relations. So it's a place of opportunity for an ambassador to be, you see.
I see. So how would you describe the current India-Brazil bilateral relations, especially the strategic partnership? And you celebrated the 75 years in 2023. How far have we come with this shared history of struggles of independence and this shared development through decades altogether? How is the present bilateral ties and how do you see the scope of it in future?
Well, you know, we have been close partners since 1948 because we from the start of the United Nations, we coordinated a lot. We had common visions, common perspectives regarding what should be the world order and a certain perception of our place in that international order. We always strove for democratic, more inclusive world order, which would be commensurate, and our place should be commensurate to our potential, to our landmass, to our population, to our culture, so to our economic weight. So we had always lots in common throughout these 75 years of bilateral relations, which was really marked by strong coordination in multilateral fora. More recently, I would say that we have been meeting also all the time in Geneva, in Rome, in New York, but also more and more in Delhi, because we are trying, and I think we have been succeeding in giving a more bilateral economic and technological content to our strategic partnership. And so this is, I think, what really encourages me a lot, because I see that there's a lot to be done, at least in 3 areas: agriculture, defense, and energy. Actually, these are my priorities here. And also fostering people-to-people ties. So there is a lot to be done. And I don't know if you have read, when President Lula was here last year for the summit, your summit, Delhi summit, he had a bilateral meeting with Honorable Prime Minister Modi, and they issued a common statement at that occasion. Right. And they said clearly that they envisioned a future for bilateral relationships, bilateral relationship that should go way beyond our traditional coordination in multilateral fora, and encompassing, among other sectors, these 3 sectors I mentioned.
Well, I will certainly come to your priorities and what's happening in the bilateral ties and the brass tacks of the issues. But you mentioned the summit, the G20 that India hosted. But let me first ask you about almost a year that Brazil has taken over the baton of the presidency. What are the top priorities and top issues in this G20 presidency of Brazil for you, especially for the developing and the emerging markets and countries?
I think the first thing I should say that our presidency builds heavily on the results of the G20 Indian presidency in at least three areas. First, in three aspects, I should say. First, in ensuring that the main interests of the developing countries of the Global South are on the agenda on a permanent basis. Of course, alongside the priorities of the Western countries. We are not saying that we want in the G20 just have ensure place for our interests. I think that you should have a balanced set of interests being discussed in the G20. So this is a first point. And another point we are emulating, I think, your presidency is the fact that we are striving to give more legitimacy to the G20. As we recall, during the Indian presidency, the African group acceded to the group. In our presidency, what we have been doing is we devised two task forces to fight poverty and hunger, another one to fight climate change, so that we can deliver for the world citizenship tangible results, meaning the G20 can deliver for you tangible results. I think this is an important point. Another point is that we organized for the first time in the G20 history a foreign ministers meeting on the sidelines of the General Assembly, on the sidelines of the so-called President's Week, and we opened the meeting to the whole membership of the UN. Right. So this idea that the G20 is talking, already enlarged G20 is talking, and now is members talking among each other, among themselves, and then we are still opening the meeting to the whole membership. So this is a very important and has a very symbolic weight, I think. And the third thing is related to the reform of global governance institutions. We also emphasize in our presidency this aspect. So you managed to deliver this summit presidential declaration, which was very difficult to pull off. Because of the geopolitical tensions, and so we built also on that. We approved in New York on the sidelines of the General Assembly. We approved a document called Call for Action, where you have the whole G20 membership agreeing clearly on the need of the reform of the global governance institutions, in a sense to promote more inclusiveness, transparency, accountability, and so on. And then you have more certain details regarding specific UN institutions, not only the General Assembly, the Security Council. By the way, the Security Council, we had this language on the need of enlarging the Security Council in order to make it more reflexive of the geopolitical at the current times. And also we talked about the World Bank, WTO, and other important Bretton Woods institutions.
Well, since you mentioned about this summit, I also want to ask you, in India, the G20 was really celebrated as a festival. We could go to every nook and corner of the country, and there was some G20 informal meetings that were taking place all across. In fact, in my state, I come from Jammu and Kashmir. For the first time, we had a tourism working group meeting taking place in Srinagar. So what were the other issues that you saw, or how was the experience of G20 like in India? And were there other areas that you actually picked up? Because one, as you mentioned, the peace negotiations that were underway. In fact, when I was at the Bharat Mandapam, I noticed that a lot of Western journalists and foreign policy wonks did not actually estimate, or actually, they were very apprehensive that there will be a common communique that will come out. But there came Prime Minister Modi with that
announcing. I remember that.
How important a moment was that? What did you think of it? And the entire experience of that festival of G20 in India?
No, I arrived by the end of your presidency, so I cannot really make a more concrete comment on how the feeling of being in India during its presidency. But I was there when Honorable Prime Minister made this announcement. I think that this was a demonstration of the capacity of brokering agreements among the big powers of this world. And this is something, I think it was really extraordinary, because there was this pending question in the air, will also the G20 become not functional as a group, because we have seen the General Assembly paralyzed, the Security Council paralyzed because of the war. And then the question was, what about G20? The previous presidency had not managed to hammer out an agreement of a joint communique, as we recall. So there was this question. For the second time on a row, we will have a G20 not being able to agree on something, at least when it comes to peace and security, of course, on the main issue regarding peace and security. So I think it was something historic, I would say. I'm not just saying for the sake of saying historic, because it was really a moment of truth, I think.
You also mentioned about Global South. How critical and important do you think is giving a voice to the Global South? India has, been campaigning about it, holding the Global South summits as well. And, whenever I travel to the West, I sense this kind of discomfort when it comes to the entire coinage of the term Global South. They're really not comfortable with it. But do you think that it's time that this kind of a Western hegemony on issues of global governance does not happen? It should be a kind of an equality all across, and Global South's concerns, Global South's statements, Global South's issues need to be reflected much more in the mainstream discourse.
I think that we can say that it's a need out of an ethic imperative, but also we would say that it's a necessity out of the so-called enlightened self-interest. Because the challenges we are facing, the big common challenges we are facing, it's about the survival of everybody, because climate change, it's threatening everybody. These extreme weather events which are happening are really a challenge for the North and for the South. And also the menace of the threat of new pandemic, hunger, poverty, inequality, all these things should be a concern to all, even because they affect everybody, all citizens of the world. So I think that of course the West has a little discomfort, I would say, in accepting that. But I think there is no way out, really, if we want to be serious about meeting these challenges.
You mentioned climate change. It's another issue that we agree on and still disagree on.
Yes.
This was one issue. You have the Paris summit that actually happened on it, and then the U-turn that the American government also took on that level. But on equitable and fair energy transition in climate change, how can India and Brazil be the voice to really bring that forward in this entire debate between the developing and the developed countries?
I think that, of course, when you are in COP, you are discussing, negotiating climate change. You are negotiating, of course, new additional NDCs. You are talking about mitigation of adaptation from a climate or scientific point of view. But of course, the underlying concern of all is who is going to be the winner, who are those who are going to be the losers, or not, who are those who stand to benefit or not to benefit from this transition from a brown economy to a green economy. So, and then energy transition is very much at the center of this discussion. Energy transition, because if you, for example, Brazil thinks that the energy transition should be technological neutral. We are not saying that electrification of energy is the sole way out, the sole way to move forward in this transition, throughout this transition period. I think the biofuels, especially biofuels which can benefit the economies of southern countries and create jobs. And then I come to what you have last question you posed, which is how Brazil and India. Well, we have been really strengthening our cooperation in the biofuel area. For more than 2 or 3 years now, we have been engaging in G2G, B2B, also academia discussions regarding the possible, I would not say reproduction, but not reproduction in India of our model, but India seeing our success story and trying to learn with us the lessons of our learning curve. Because as you know, Brazil these days, 85% of our passengers' cars, they run on ethanol. Yes. So we have a success story to tell. So we are developing with India a partnership in order to make ethanol, make biofuels a world commodity, and also encourage global South countries, also those with tropical climates that have the agricultural preconditions to raise sugar cane, for example, to also to benefit from this. From biofuels as a path to energy transition, because it creates jobs for the agricultural sector. It creates jobs for people also mid-level workers, not only blue-collar workers, and also for researchers. So this is what we are trying. And by the way, we have been trying this within the Global Biofuel Alliance. Yeah. But also apart from that, we are trying also to strengthen our cooperation in other fields of energy. Wind energy. Brazil has a developed technology of wind turbines. We have a big Brazilian corporation here, WEG, which has started production of wind turbines here in India. Okay. And also regarding, because in that India will need also to import oil in this transition phase. Oil is going to be phased out, but it's not tomorrow. So there have been talks also between India and Brazil, that Brazil is a big exporter of oil, in order to ensure energy security through our exports of oil.
Well, from climate change to another significant issue, which is trade and investment and business ties between India and Brazil. You've seen, I think, a significant focus on that between these two capitals. I think, if I'm not wrong, bilateral trade to the tune of $10 billion US dollars. What are the sectors that are significant in this, and what is the road ahead of increasing trade and investment?
I think that in 2022, our bilateral trade peaked, I think, to $15 billion. And then it went down because of the commodity prices went down to, I think, 12 billion. I think there are two points. From the Indian side, I think the road is open to increase the exports of Indian products to Brazil. You have a diversified export list of products. Brazil exports to India. They concentrate on a few commodities, and this is, of course, up to us also to improve that. It has to do also with a number of domestic challenges we have, including an issue of tax reform. I don't want to enter into these details, but we recently approved in Brazil a historical tax reform, a little bit akin to your GST reform, which will, of course, increase the competitiveness of our products. So it has to do with some Brazilian challenges of our industry. But we should take a broader view, and let me say that investments has been really picking up from Brazil to India and from India to Brazil. Now, for example, a conservative estimate of the stock of FDIs Indian FDIs in Brazil is 7 billion, and it's a conservative estimate. And there have been also announcements of Brazilian investments in India. So we see, we are not seeing trade really expanding exponentially, but we are seeing investments being done in both directions. So and one figure more, just one figure more, in 13 months we have received over 40 business missions from Brazil here. You see, also the results of this effort, of this boom of missions, I think will be reflected in the years to come.
And how about the defense cooperation? Do we see more jointness in the terms of, there is Atmanirbhar Bharat
Yes.
that they speak about,
Yeah.
Make in India.
Yeah.
Joint defense equipment sharing of technology as well on cards, perhaps?
Well, I will not enter into many details regarding the precise products because, of course, defense trade is always by definition.
You don't speak too much in public about
Yes,
it.
yes. But what I can say, first, it's a fact. There have been a number in the last 2 years of a number of visits, high-level visits from India to Brazil and from Brazil to India of high-level officials in the defense sector. For example, the commander of the Indian Air Force was in Brazil in 2000, I think in 2023 first semester, and then came to India, the commander-in-chief of the Brazilian Army, then of the Brazilian Navy, and the Brazilian Air Force.
Amazing.
So you see, this is a continuity of continuous flow of high-level visits, which of course these high-level officials come with a delegation to discuss. And just to give you concrete examples, which I can give to you. Recently, 2 light ammunition firms from Brazil have opened production units here in India in joint ventures, and of course taking advantage of the Make in India subsidies or encouragements. For example, Taurus, which is a light arm company. I think that they opened a production unit, if I'm not mistaken, in Haryana. And then you have CBC, which is another light arm company, who opened production facilities in Andhra Pradesh. So this is our examples, very recent examples. Of course, Embraer has traditionally here sold the E145 platforms, for the platform of early warning monitoring of the borders. So this has been a traditional product sold by Embraer here. So we are looking forward to also to. I think there is political will, because when it comes to trade in defense, there must be political will, and the political will is there. You see.
And one another interesting aspect is the space exploration and collaboration in that. You've seen recent successes in India with the Chandrayaan-3 and Aditya L1, and now we see the big, Gaganyaan mission that will take place. So, what are the areas where Brazil perhaps is collaborating with India's, space research organization for space exploration?
I think that we don't have the rocket science you have here, the level of rocket science you developed here. But Brazil produces satellites to monitor weather, to monitor, of course, for security purposes, our territory, and also for environmental purposes. But we have also a developed sector, what you call space economy, basically using the information delivered by satellites to produce models, for example, of weather forecasting, early warning of extreme weather events. Brazil can cooperate on that, and we have launched the satellite here. Brazilian satellite was launched here in 2021. So we have much to do here, but I would say that there is untapped potential, I would say, here.
You also spoke about, Ambassador, initially about agriculture and the rural upliftment and economy, rural development in many ways. How do you ensure that? How do you come together with India to ensure not just food and nutritional security, but also further ties in agriculture and perhaps bring in technology in agriculture as well?
Yes, I think here it's really a natural field of complementarity. I'm not talking about trade complementarity because it's clear that India needs to be self-sufficient in food. There is no doubt about that, with the size of your population. So the approach of the Brazilian agribusiness, the Brazilian scientific and research community is to seek complementarities and partnerships, not exporting mass production of cotton, soya, this big corn as we export to other countries. It's about partnership. And we are, for example, we are developing with India, we have already some cooperation schemes going on regarding helping raising the productivity of of milk in India. I don't know if you're aware, the large majority of Brazilian cattle comes originally from India.
Wow.
Yes, Nellore, Gir, from Gujarat, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
A minority of our cattle comes from Europe. So we have developed in Brazil the productivity of milk of this cattle, and in some cases, the productivity of milk of our Nellore Gir cows are eight times as high as in some parts of India. Is this thanks to genetic, not genetic modification, but when you choose the specimens that produce more milk, and then you take them together, so to speak, and also cattle feed and cattle management. So we have achieved these results. So this is one area which it's about trading in technology, not really trading in goods. This is one example. But we have also a memorandum of understanding, which is a broad one regarding, which is one I think concluded in the early 2000s. But there is a new one which is going to be signed, which will focus on research, and the focus is resilience to extreme weather events. Because Brazil also, I don't know if you're aware, we have lots of rain, but in the Amazon region and lots of water in Brazil, but the bulk of the Brazilian agricultural so-called miracle was achieved in a dry, acid land with little rain. So this is why you have a connection.
Ambassador, one critical question that is still left is that we are living in a deeply divided world. You've seen two simultaneous wars taking shape: Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and Hamas. How do you see India's role, in the Asia Pacific and the Indo-Pacific, and especially foreign policy and role of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Foreign Minister Jaishankar in shaping opinion or being peace brokers or having a new kind of a thought process in this new international order?
I think that India has a tradition of promoting peaceful settlement of disputes. Of course, it went to war throughout its independent history out of necessity, being attacked. This is something else. So we have coordinated a lot with India in the UN. Also, we coincided, for example, in 2010-11, if I'm not mistaken, in the Security Council. So we are always for international law and peaceful settlement of disputes. And I think that India can play this role. I think that in the G20, the way you managed to broker that agreement shows that you have something to offer.
Right.
I think you really have something to offer to the world, and I think that this very recent announcement of this progress you made with China in the line of actual control shows that diplomacy can work when you have the political will and you have the expertise. I think the two things are needed to broker good agreements. So I think you've shown that diplomacy can work if you want, you see.
Finally, one last question. You've been here for about 16 months or so. In the next 1.5 or 2 years that you are here, I would want you to stay on. But what would be your milestones? What would be your key areas that the world or perhaps Indians should remember your tenure as?
Well, I will start by saying that I think I have instructions from the highest level in Brazil, because I always I mentioned at the outset this declaration of Prime Minister Modi and President Lula regarding expanding the relations way beyond the traditional realms of political coordination. So I think I feel I have a clear instruction here. So my focus would be to give more meat, more content to strategic partnership in terms of agriculture, defense, energy, and people-to-people ties. We need to bring more Indian citizens and Brazilian citizens together. I think these would be my 4 priorities. No, they are my 4 priorities.
Well, absolutely. Let's hope that these priorities actually are operationalized and India and Brazil see much more success in this bilateral cooperation. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.
No,
It was a pleasure
thank you.
speaking.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.